You are listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcasts. Keep up with the latest episodes by downloading the Podbean app or stream episodes via our social media accounts. Search for Let's Talk Trio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This episode is sponsored by Student Access. Student Access, the leader in Trio software. Student Access is an online database solution that allows Trio programs to track their students' information, connect with students by text messages, streamline the APR, and work from anywhere, all online, with automatic updates for changes from the Department of Education. Their technical support team includes former Trio staff and has over 50 years of combined experience working with Trio. Make it easier to focus on your priority, the students. For more information and to request a free demo, visit their website at www.studentaccess.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-801-1232. That website again is www.studentaccess.com or 1-800-801-1232. Be sure to share your favorite episodes on your social media by tapping that share button. This is a great way to support the podcast. Now here's your host, Juan Rivas.
Thank you, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, listener, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Trio. I am your host, Juan Rivas. In today's episode, we have Elias Quiñonez, who is a Trio alum of the Upward Bound program at Colorado State University. Elias is on the podcast to talk about his educational journey, where he gets his inspirations from, and his current career experience. So coming up in just a bit, Elias Quiñonez. A huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Rosario O'Reilly, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jamie Motley, Jaded Electronics, Angelica Valdez, TrioJoblist.com, NOSOTROS Education Center, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Choose one of 4 patron levels. You can support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. $1 a month goes a long way in supporting this podcast. If you own a business and would like to advertise with us, email us at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. If you would like to nominate a participant, staff, or alumni to be on the podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a great episode featuring Elias Quiñonez, who is a alumni of the Trio Upward Bound program at Colorado State University and is currently a CSU professional. This was such a fun episode to make, first because we did this episode live back in February. We had great engagement and people listening in, so we are just now getting around to publishing this episode for the podcast. So once again, this is a great Trio story, and I hope you enjoy. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, Trio Nation, and welcome to a very special episode of Let's Talk Trio. We are broadcasting live from the Nutrien Building at Colorado State University. My guest on this podcast is a Trio alum of the Upward Bound program at Colorado State University and graduated from the University of Northern Colorado holding a bachelor's and master's degree. He is currently a PhD candidate at Colorado State University. Our guest served as an admission counselor for the University of Northern Colorado, college counselor for Colorado Department of Higher Education, and currently serves as the manager of student life for agricultural science within Colorado State Universities. His hobbies include he's being a novice painter, fishing, reading, and inspiring folks around him. It is an honor to welcome Elias Quiñonez to the Let's Talk Trio podcast. Elias, welcome to the podcast.
Mr. Rivas, thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here and excited to represent the Trio.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. This is our first one-on-one interview live broadcast on Podbean, so I want to say it's an honor to be interviewing you. It's fantastic.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I've been waiting a long time to try to get on here. I couldn't be more excited about the opportunity.
It has been a long time. I think we've been kind of once in a while touching base, seeing if we can get something to work. And then we finally agreed on a date and time, and you initiated on the end. So thank you so much for being here tonight. For the audience, Elias and I are colleagues here at Colorado State University. We are in the middle of the semester at CSU. How are things on your end, Elias?
2023 is off to just a wonderful start, and we just got some great momentum going in regards to the advocating of what we do in regards to higher ed for underrepresented students, and I'm on cloud nine at the moment, and that's not always the case for those of us that are in higher ed and we're in the front line, so to say. But right now, it's just some wonderful things to be thankful for.
Awesome. Some of the feedback I get from students around campus is that this semester has started off with a snowstorm right in the middle of everything. Has that snowstorm thrown you off any at all?
Not really. And it was when it happened. It was a time where it was the start of the semester. We didn't know what to expect, and of course, this is semester 2 of our new building. This is semester 2 of really students coming back, and after the impact of COVID, so there was just a bit of unknown all over, and we're thankful that some of us were thankful that we got the extra days to be at home and kind of recover and and just give us a little bit more time to prepare. But at this point, we are, and I feel that even our students are just full blast and going, and that's exciting.
Absolutely. On the topic of being prepared, how do you prepare yourself for each semester?
Ooh, that's tough. While in my role as manager of student life, there's some things that we do pretty consistently. We know that financial aid, opens up typically October 1st, and we have till March 1st. So we start thinking about, the programming, and we try to, like right now, we're really trying to encourage those last-minute students to get that FAFSA in and CSU scholarships in and start preparing for next year. But so we have these systemic programming, but we never know really where our students are at, and and I try to leave some space for that kind of development and try to gauge it on basing where our students are at the moment.
Right on. What is your favorite part of the semester?
Ooh, wow. That is an awesome... the holidays get pretty fun. Once it starts getting to the fall, students are getting kind of excited and ready for those breaks. So I really look forward to that. And then, of course, prior to the summer starting, one of the things is, and it's for all of us, I try to, when I speak, because I was a student and I work with students, and I sense and try to gauge where they're at, and our students are going all in, and they're putting in a lot of work, and they're exhausted oftentimes, after some of the big finals. And so seeing where they see the light at the end of the tunnel and the breaks, and seeing them get excited, as well as us, I think that can be fun. That's
awesome. Talk to us about your position that you alluded to earlier at CSU. What is this role, and what do you do?
Sure. So, manager of student life and diversity. It is advocating for all students, of course, but really wanting to give space and promote diversity in ag for our students, and we just see a great need from our industry. We where they're constantly asking for diverse thought and diverse views from students, and we know that there's always a gap in regards to enrollment of ethnically diverse students, and College of Ag is no different. So we're trying to decrease that gap and really want to create not only access, but access and support for students when they're here.
Absolutely.
And we know that I feel diverse communities have always had a rich history with agriculture. Yeah. So for me, it's clear as day that that story needs to be upheld and needs to be honored and respected. And I think having that opportunity to advocate in both of these spaces, agriculture as well as higher education for underrepresented students, as well as all students, and understanding what are things that are working for retention and completion. I think it's just it's a privilege and one that I'm grateful for every day.
Wonderful. How long have you been on this at this role?
Sure, I think I'm going on a little over 4 years now, if not close to 4 years, working with CSU. Now, I have been on campus since January 10th on CSU.
Wow.
But from that time to 2018, I was an affiliate. So I was working with the Colorado Department of Higher Ed and with a program through Colorado Gear Up that was called Colorado Challenge, and that I was assigned here to work with CSU students. So the students that I had the opportunity to provide what we would call holistic advising were Daniels Fund, Denver Scholarship Foundation, Alliance students, Asset students we were serving, and several other first-gen programs that we were providing supplemental support. And it was under the Community for Excellence, which again is a wonderful, wonderful program here at CSU, as you well know. And you really learn from our students. You learn what's working. You get a great picture of systems that aren't working. And what better way to be a part of efforts of progress and of success than to hear directly firsthand from these students' experiences.
That's wonderful. Outside of CSU, talk to us about some of the intersecting identities that are salient to you. Sure. You mentioned earlier that fishing is part of something that you love doing, painting. Yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah. Well, some of the identities that I hold strong. So I am a Mexican-American. I was born in Texas. So there's the often terms of Tejano and Chicano and all of those identities. So for those that don't see us, I'm of a family of 12, and I was the youngest of 7, and then my father remarried, and we had a blended family, so I had stepbrothers and half-brothers, but so we were a big family, and originally from West Texas, so I hold those identities because they gave me a lot, and they've made me better for sure, and then we moved to Greeley, and there I... we was involved in our faith and working everywhere. So, and I'm considered a non-traditional. So I was a student that didn't return back to college for long periods of time after poor attempts or just after I think a long journey. It took a while for me to get back into college and figure this life out. And by then, I am married. I've gone married for 20 years on May 31st.
Congratulations.
Thank you. My wife's name is Ana Laura, and she is a teacher at Harris Elementary. She's a kinder teacher, and I take great pride in seeing her also in education and advocating for students. This school is a bilingual school, and so in addition to that, I'm a father, and I take that identity. It's one of my greatest joys, to be honest. I take great joys in my degrees and my faith and all of the things that I've been a part of. But being a father and a husband, but being a father is by far probably the most rewarding and stressful at times. My son started school here at CSU last fall, and
really?
Graphic design. And man, as parents, we feel that a lot of what we've done, the sacrifices that we've made, and one, it's honoring our family who sacrificed even more and went through so much more. But here, we went through quite a bit as well, and it was all for the purpose of making life easier for our children and the legacy that we leave behind. And so seeing that come to fruition, and seeing my son now, Christian Quiñonez, who's 19, and starting college, and us doing all the things that we thought we were right, paid off. He's got a completely different perspective than what me or his mom have and had, and it's just a completely different experience.
That's amazing. And I totally relate with you, being a father myself and seeing kiddos grow up. You really have that influence, right, about how you're hoping that you're doing right by them. You're the stressors of being a parent. Absolutely. So you're a father, husband, mentor, teacher, advisor, and you're very active within the CSU community, because it feels like anytime I go to Canvas Stadium or go somewhere, I happen to run into you. You're super active. How do you manage to balance all of those hats?
Well, that's a wonderful question. I'm happy to talk about that, but I want to clarify the disclaimer of that. What the things shared maybe
certainly.
Of me personally, and maybe not of the university or the college in all experiences. Because when I talk about, again, the world outside of school or work, the things that really do bring balance are a lot of things like hanging out with friends, or I can appreciate a good cigar and a good scotch every once in a while, and reading, coffee. All of the I enjoy being inspired, and I get the more things that I can find inspiration from, and that makes for a great day, and I try to be in tune with that. So we work hard, as you know. This work it's really it can be pretty taxing.
It can be, yeah.
And in so many ways, what we advocate for is more than just our jobs. It's a lot of things are personal, and everything that we're fighting for, it doesn't always quit at 5 o'clock.
Right.
So it really is important. One of the things I pride myself in is having a home where it is peaceful, and having created a family dynamic that is that. And then there's times here in Fort Collins, it's kind of nice to enjoy one of the many breweries that we have.
Absolutely.
And the community that we have here. So those are things that I think it took me a while to figure out. But I now recognize how important it was, especially during this dissertation and during the doctoral program. The pausing and the making time for yourself, finding community, and sometimes that was few and far between, especially during the COVID times.
Oh my gosh, yeah. During COVID times. I think the lockdown, the quarantine, all of it forced us to really reflect on ourselves. I'm going to go off script a little bit and ask, was there any moments during that lockdown quarantine what were you learning about yourself, or what did you come to learn about yourself?
Sure. And more so than just myself, but I was learning that the impact of not having contact with people and seeing what that did to our students, and seeing what that did to us and my friends and my friendships, and was mind-boggling. I mean, we went from being at home for a couple days to months, and and then you realize, well, when was the last time you went to a social gathering, or when was the last time you went to this or that, or the guilt factor of visiting someone because of the fear of passing something, or not knowing where they were at. I mean, a very recent incident, I think, situation that I think correlates to that is my wife, her college friend, or her school teacher had a baby recently, and we're all excited for her, and we're excited for them, and they live here, and I think in most situations, we would be like, well, let's go see the baby, or hey, have them come over, and things like that. But now the fear of and this is the fact that we've gotten past a lot of the worst, but the fear of passing anything over to an infant is a thing that, and those simple, missing those moments and not being there for even the mom as a friend or the family, or saying, hey, let's go, we'll bring you dinner tonight, because of the fear of just, of passing something to an infant. Those, I mean, that's, while it seems minute, it's kind of a big deal, and I was thinking, well, I was like, if we had a kid, we'd want friends to come over and stuff, and that's not the case anymore. You can't just assume that stopping by somebody's house, like, traditionally, those are things that, I felt very comfortable with my friends, and having my friends just come over. I was growing up with that idea of, hey, let's cruise around town, or let's go visit this person, not calling, not saying anything. And those times are kind of gone, man. They've gone by the wayside. So, and that was devastating. That had a direct impact on some of the best leaders, some of the best students, some of the best, professionals. because of, we've seen it academically, we've seen it in so many different mental health. The mere fact of not, of going home by yourself. Our students were going home to a room that was empty and quiet. It was devastating to recognize that there was little that we could do. Oftentimes, in our roles as professions and with our experience in these areas, we have an answer for a lot of things that our students are going through. We have, solutions. They come to us because of those solutions. And oftentimes, if they hear us out and they try them, we can get them through these things.
Right.
But this was an area where our hands were tied and we could not do anything. And that was devastating. So experiencing things like that and loss within the families and recognizing what funerals now look like, or all of the celebratory things, as Latinos, we enjoy, celebrating and having
big
these
get-togethers
big
for sure.
And that was sometimes taken away, and that was really weird and tough to understand. I think we're going to be feeling that impact for a long time.
I agree. I think COVID forced the community all around, I think, in the United States to really think about how we treat others. Those mask mandates, whether you're for or against, it's still being conscious about the other person, right? And you're absolutely right. When it comes to the Latino community, Latinx community, that impacted how we do get-togethers. I do remember way before COVID, as you and I were getting to know each other, you invited me over, like, hey, come over, get something to eat. And I remember that camaraderie. I remember the establishment, the rapport that you would build with others. And to know that was gone for you, that first, I'm very sorry that happened, and two, hopefully we get together for asadas or for whatever in the future.
That invitation is still open for sure. always open.
Well, I appreciate that, Elias. Can you talk to us about the hobbies that you got into? So you got into fishing, painting. How did that get introduced to you? Was it something that grew on you? How did that happen for you?
Sure. Painting, I would say, and both fishing and painting correlated from the same thing. I would say the fishing came from my father. We were because we were from the lower income bracket, and we were in the, in those situations, such a big family. It was necessary for my father to go fishing, and so they would stock the lakes in Greeley and Glenmere and all the lakes. My dad would which lakes would be stocked. He knew at the time, it was 8 fish for adults and 4 fish for kids. So this is the one time he wanted all the grandkids, all the kids together, and there we were putting whatever bait we had. But ideally, we could bring home 20, 30 trout and perch. And in Texas, we were catching perch by the, filling up bread bags full of them.
Wow.
But that was provide food,
Yeah,
and
certainly.
It was a great meal too, not the healthiest when we're frying everything. But while it was a necessity, it was also probably the most precious times that I got to spend with my dad out in the lake and just to see him and spend time with him, or to be out in nature and to see, again, agriculture and its beauty in that, and to understand it at that lens, it created beautiful memories. So that's how fishing came. And I was hoping that my son and I would have the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
Man, graphics or the computers and technologies just robbed us of that, man. He's like, Dad, how long do we got to be out here, man? And so it's a little different, and I got to make a little more effort for that. But and then the painting happened in 2018. My father was almost 80, and my stepmother, they were in a car accident in West Texas, and both passed away in that accident.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So I didn't really know, and unfortunately, in our family, we've just experienced so much loss within family, and then. But my father was and is my mentor, and was my king, really, and so I had the utmost respect for him, and always, and it wasn't even because of strict discipline or anything like that. However, he could ask for anything, and I would have done it in a heartbeat. So it wasn't fear, but it was really respect that I had for him, and so when I lost him. And then I had lost my mother at 8, my biological mother I had lost at 8. So when I lost him, and my stepmother, who was a part of my life for so many years, It was devastating, and I really didn't know how to process. And if I was being transparent, or at least I recognize that Latino men, and maybe Latinos in general, but I knew that Latino men haven't always done the best of recognizing those emotions and being able to talk about those emotions, to being able to talk or deal or address with mental health, and it impacted me naturally. And the only way that I knew how to process some of that was through painting. So for the first time ever, I'd always been drawing and stuff like that, but I've never picked up oil paints. And in 2017, I just started oil painting.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite paintings was a lion that I think depicts who I was and who I was at that time and who I am and where I'm going. And since then, I recognized that, well, I could do this for others. And so I started painting pets. My friends that, they would lose their pets for some reason, or there were some things that were in their life that were special. So I've been fortunate enough to do a handful of paintings that some took me 10 hours, some took me 40.
Wow.
And I've kept, I think, maybe 2. I made one for my son. And what I love about that medium has been, and I shared this with my friend, is just really the inadequacies and the inadequates and the flaws of art in general. Especially hand painted art. It's gonna have flaws, and all of my paintings have that.
Right.
But I'm grateful that my friends recognize that the time and the attention, and that it's my best, and the why is what matters, and that's I think that would be my life's intentions, is to recognize the why.
Yeah.
Right? And that's been good for me. So
that's wonderful. Elias, can you tell us what else should listeners know about you if they're getting to know you?
Whew. I mean, that's a deep question. I mean, and there's so many things that I am proud about, and there's so many things that bring me joy. But I would say that the greatest joy has been the investment in others. I would share that with my son, and I would share that one of the biggest life lessons for me has been, and while I value money and I appreciate the nice things, the greatest rewards have always been the investment in others and seeing others grow and help them get to and through. And I've been fortunate in the last 14 years to be a part of higher education and to continue advocating for what it is that I believe and what has provided opportunities for me and my family and so many others. And
wonderful.
Yeah.
So Elias, we're going to rewind the clock a bit. Can you talk to us about your upbringing and what was that like for you?
Sure. So being the youngest of 7, I held all of those identities. So for anybody that's read the birth order,
the birth charts and everything.
Exactly.
The zodiac and everything.
I am every bit of the last born, and so I was the baby of the family, and I got the treatment until my mom was gone, and then I got the other kind of WWF treatment to my brothers. So all of that, man, and I've had a rich life in that. I've always been surrounded by people who love me and love. So when my mom passed away at 8 years old, and I was, I think, in 4th grade, it was, again, it rocked my world. And I didn't know how to handle that or process that, and it created a lot of challenges. I've shared in the past that prior to that, 2 years prior to my mom passing away, my father was in an oil field accident and burned 75% of his body was third-degree burn. So he was in ICU for years, and and that impacted our income, and that impacted who we were. I mean, here we were, 7 of us. My father remarried. We turned into 7 into 12, and but still, my father not able to work, and still mouths to feed, and it was pretty. At that point, we didn't know what poverty. I didn't know we were in poverty, but looking back, it was pretty fair to say that we were pretty impoverished, and so working the fields was a thing for us, even though we were second generation Mexican American. It was common for us to go and work the fields at the time, and then just working in general.
Yeah.
Making money somehow was always a thing. So we moved to Greeley shortly after my mother had passed away, and and we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. There was 9 of us, so my older brothers had moved out. 9 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment. And man, when we got into Section 8 housing there in Greeley, it was like winning the lottery, man.
Really?
There was like 4 beds and 4 bedrooms, and even though we had to share a room, we were like, man, we thought we were in heaven.
Yeah.
And we had a bus taking us to school, and we were free and reduced lunch. I mean, life was all right. And we had after school, we would go to the Boys and Girls Club would have a bus, and we'd go and until the bus took us home. So I mean, we really didn't know what we didn't have. But what we did have was still pretty special, and what those communities do bring were, friends that live together. We were all in the same similar units. It wasn't like, if you had nice shoes, that was cool, but we knew where to get the Mexican candy. We knew where to get the icicles. What apartment was selling this and that. We would go play basketball and do all these things. And we all knew financially where we all were, so we weren't trying to impress anybody. And it was just a fun and a good time. I mean, and we were in some tough schools. I mean, District 6 was really challenging at the time. They weren't, I don't know if I think there's so many factors that can talk or that correlate. Whether it be large classes, whether it be what kind of support structures. Who's valuing what? How many of my friends got to a college counselor? I don't ever recall visiting a college counselor. I had more of my friends, dropping out of school, and I found, by the time I got to high school, many of my friends had already started families, had already either been incarcerated or got caught up in things, or were working. They dropped out of school to work, and that was the norm. So for us, just graduating high school was a pretty big accolade.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, going to college was even bigger, and
sure.
And that kind of takes us to that second chapter.
Yeah. So, did your family place a lot of importance in education?
Not at all.
No.
And I don't want to make them sound bad, because I don't think it was with ill intention, but they simply taught me what they knew, and that was hard work ethics and to provide support to family. They were very happy with us going to church, getting a good job, and I don't care where you lived or how you lived. I don't care what you drove, but you provided for your family, and that was their big thing. So I could have easily graduated high school, and my father, would have just been just as proud. Really, they just didn't understand education.
Right.
So there we were, and so when I say that, and this will get us into what Upward Bound taught us, or TRIO programs taught us, but I don't recall ever being asked about my homework or being told, "Hey, go study, go do your homework." I don't recall much of that, that kind of discipline. And there was a lot of kids. I mean, there was just
plenty of kids
other priorities that were kind of feeding us, was kind of keeping us alive, was kind of a more important thing. So I really don't recall ever having my parents go to parent-teacher conferences. It was that, but I didn't think there was anything different. I didn't realize there was anything different.
Okay.
And in regards to who I was in middle school, high school, and elementary, I was always just getting by. I mean, so C's, I'd be good. I mean, and I was a good kid. I wasn't out there I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't involved in gangs or any of those things. But I also, I wasn't studious. I was just pretty much almost invisible in the classroom. And I had a few teachers that saw something in me and would ask me after class. They realized that I could draw or paint and stuff. And I remember one teacher, Miss Call, Janet Call, I throw a little shout out to her. She said, "Elias, would you mind doing this mural for me on the wall?" And I did this mountains, painting. And I thought, man, I was so honored that she would see some value in me, see my talent, and then to allow me to do something like that, I was blown away that she'd show me that attention. And so there was little things like that that were glimpses of it. Yeah. But other than that, man, I was just getting by. I really don't think I would have been missed in high school had I stopped showing up. You know, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I recognize I recognize the impact of that.
Absolutely. Did you look up to anybody while you were growing up?
Absolutely. I've been fortunate. Again, I was involved in Christian faith, and so there was people there that I really valued and I looked up to, who were doing some great things. And the Christian faith is oftentimes people that instill peace and instill love, and people that are kindness and compassion. So I've always been attracted to those things, and so. I found people who permeated those characteristics. So I think growing up, it wasn't until there were some teachers, but it wasn't until years later in college where Upward Bound for sure.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know if we want to go there right out the gate, but I'll do it right quick, man. Paul Thayer is a mentor, is somebody I deeply respect and admire, and am fortunate enough to have been under his leadership for a period of time. And then there was Nate Easley, there was Nathan Cadenas, there was Kurt de la Cruz. They were all counselors during Upward Bound, and I would say that was my first glimpse of looking at people who were men that were living a life that was different from me. It wasn't that there were men working just in manufacturing and Montfort's and nothing against that. I respected all of that hard work, but that to me was really all I'd known. Up until that point, I started to see a whole different life of men that were doing things, getting paid, having a living, and advocating and connecting with people that looked different than they did. So it was weird. That was special.
Yeah.
Jana Schwartz was another amazing. She was part of CHE, so Center for Human Enrichment at UNC, and she was my advisor. And she was white, and she's seen me for who I am today, in a time that I was lost. And so I cannot give enough credit to the advisors and the people that are instilling hope in people that don't look like them, and students that don't look like them, that recognize that the paths will look different than the traditional. Predictive modeling is great and all, and we all have our structures for advising of what high risk and stuff are. But I remember for me to graduate, my final semester, I did 26 credits, and I had to. I had to graduate. I had to start working. I had to move on to this next chapter, and that's just what I had to do. And on top of that, I was working a part-time job, and I was already married. My son was born. So those are things that sometimes people have to do, and unless you have someone that you can sit down and talk about the realities of, this is just what I have to do right now, and they say, I believe you can do it. That was powerful. And later on, Dr. Schwartz invited me to her dissertation defense. And I just couldn't be more honored to have met some people like her and recognize how important that role was for me. Absolutely. And then since then, I've just met so many wonderful people. But those names, Paul Thayers, the Jana Schwartz, Janet Calls, were inspirational to me for sure.
Amazing. How would your friends and family and colleagues describe you?
Hopefully authentic, maybe sometimes funny, hopefully handsome, hopefully, but caring. And if it's not that, I would be disappointed. If people really didn't recognize how I wanted to genuinely connect with people. I oftentimes, I think if I'd consider myself a pet, the idea of a Labrador or those dogs that always want to kind of just be around people and want people to like them. That's me for sure. I always have cared about people, and I seen that. I was involved in the ministry, and that was what led me to the ministry. It was like helping the lost and being there for the broken. I understood the Christian faith because I believed in like what you do unto the least of them, you do unto me. The first shall be last shall be first. All of those things of humility and the servant leadership style I believed in, and all that. So I would hope that people would at least understand, the intention of the efforts of me wanting to connect at that level and just wanting to build people up. And, that doesn't always happen. I'm only human, flawed, but I oftentimes share how we each have this weapon, and it's a hammer, and the hammer's our tongue, and, we can use it to build up or tear people down. And I know I've done both, but I want to use it to build people up. I recognize how important words are and how important building people up, instilling hope, and that's what I want to be known for, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. For the audience, Elias, can you tell us, what were you like middle school, elementary and middle school? What was Elias like at that point?
Sure. It's funny that in elementary, I was completely opposite of where I am today. I think if people would see me now, they'd be like, Elias, keep your shirt on at potlucks, don't be karaoke, and all of these things. I'm definitely a more, extroverted person now, and I really value social aspect of things. I'm really comfortable in those spaces and really enjoy humor. But back then, it was completely different. I remember I was the baby, so I remember times of I would just have to tell Mom that, my stomach hurt, and I was like, peace, while everybody had to go to school. I was out, man, and as soon as those doors closed, I was out and about playing, dude. So that was all I had to do. I never had to be social, but my brother, I got to give a shout out to my brother, Elias Quiñonez. He's 4 years older than me, and he was my, and is an inspiration and my mentor. And we had a bond that oftentimes people like twins would have. He was the person, but I felt safe around him all the time. But I was that shy kid that wouldn't talk to anybody but him. I'd get sick if he wanted to go stay the night at somebody else's house. I couldn't be. I just always wanted to be around him. It was interesting, and so it took a while for me to get past that. I remember kinder being a struggle because I couldn't socialize. I just wanted to be loved at home and spoiled, really. I was a spoiled kid. And and it turned into just horrible habits. In third grade, I flunked out. I didn't know my multiplication tables, and I flunked out. I remember being called out of a classroom every Friday, man, for after multiplication table in Post, Texas. And we would get 2 swats with a wooden paddle for failing a math test. Yeah, I could tell you the name of the other person, and her and I, man, we know what happens if they're like, go to the hallway, and it was crazy. But the paddling and stuff, I think it's still a thing in West Texas.
I think it is, yeah. Some corporal punishment, I think.
It is wild, right? But my parents allowed it, man. I'm like, Dad, why would you have to do that? But it wasn't until later on I developed some confidence, and I don't know where that came from or when that shift happened. I think it had largely to do when my mom passed, and then just recognizing that look, this world's going to be tough, and you're going to have to figure it out. Right. And humor and connecting with people was one of those things that filled my cup.
All right.
And then it led to who I am today, and that is a little bit more boisterous, a little bit more extroverted, a little bit more fun.
Absolutely. So you moved through elementary, middle school, and then you got to high school. What type of support did you receive there while in high school?
I remember, again, I was this kid. I wasn't. I would say I was almost invisible. But I remember one time in high school where a teacher wanted to meet with me after class and accused me of smoking pot. I'd never done drugs before. I'd never drank. My first drink wasn't until I was 18. And I started recognizing that, man, I was in awe. I was really baffled at why somebody would see me as that, and it was interesting. It was an interesting time of not connecting. I would talk to a lot of different groups. You know how high school can be different groups.
Oh, certainly.
So there's the kids from Mexico, so I would connect there because of, but my Spanish wasn't all that great, so there was that. I never got into sports because it was always work. At 15, I was working at Taco Bell, and as soon as I get out of school, I'd want to go to work and stuff because we never had money. So it wasn't until I started earning my own money that experienced a whole different life. So I missed out on proms. I missed out on sports. I missed out on a lot of things, I think, and even connecting with friends. So I don't. So it wasn't the glorious thing by any means. I wasn't the most popular by any means. But that's actually when Upward Bound came into the picture in 92 and 93.
Right on. Talk to us about that. How did Upward Bound find you, or was it the other way around?
Oh, definitely Upward Bound found me, and to my parents, I think it was no different than Boys and Girls Clubs, because it's like, if it's got a bus, it's gonna feed you, it's gonna take you. Yeah. Hey, mijo, good luck. So, and that's pretty much what Upward Bound was, and so for those, I mean, your listeners probably could tell everything about Upward Bound, but I want to be, Upward Bound is part of a trio program, and trio's focusing on first gen. Oftentimes limited income students, and that's exactly who and what I was. And so how they discovered me, I have no idea. I don't recall. Actually, I do recall my brother being a part of Upward Bound in Texas Tech, but not really recognizing what it was, other than the fact that he's leaving home, man, and I was hating life at that time because, but it happened to me. I got picked up, in Greeley, and they were like, hey, this is, you're going to go for 8 weeks, I believe, and
wow, yeah,
and it was so new, man. It was so new to me, scary, and it was transformational. I like that. It was powerful, man. I like that. I didn't have the best grades, and somehow they said, let's do this, and my parents allowed me to go. It's the weirdest thing ever, dude. I've never been away from my family for days on end, much less a week. Well, I guess, a church camp, it was a week, but never weeks upon weeks.
Weeks upon weeks, yeah.
Wild to me. And then to be invited into a college where I knew little to nothing about, nothing about what it was to be a college student, nothing to know about any of that life. And here I was, getting on a bus, and taking my nappy old nasty pillow and some saddle blankets, and others had their kits because they knew what to bring. I didn't know jack. I mean, I was just I just took what I had. Yeah. And but I'm in awe, man. I remember walking into, and I want to say it's one of our older residence halls here at CSU, and I'm like, they have a pool table in the lobby. We're gonna get our own room. And dude, my mind was mind blowing for the first time that we went to the dining halls, and they said, "Hey, this card right here gets you all you can eat." And I'm like, "You mean this is a buffet?" And I'm like, "Wow, we can get lunch and dinner." Dang. I was floored, man. I was floored. I said, "Shh. Don't even take me back home, man. I'm gonna live here." I could not believe what was happening. I really, it was mind-boggling to me. And then they allowed us to use the rec center, and I'm like, that was the first time I learned to play racquetball, and I seen weights, and I was like that way, and it was just amazing, dude. Yeah. Amazing. This is the first time where I have like access to the latest amenities that everybody else had access to, and that's rare. That was rare for kids that were coming from where I came from.
Very. So was it before Upward Bound or after Upward Bound did you start thinking about college?
Oh, jeez, man. Definitely after Upward Bound. I had no idea what college was. I really would have. I don't think I would. I know for a fact I would not be here today had it not been for Upward Bound Trio. Yeah. I know for a fact.
Were there any colleges that were in your mind already at that point that you're like, you know what, I want to go to?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, maybe not even. Yeah. I fell out of Upward Bound after my second year, but by then I'd already been shown. So I'd already been shown the Willy Wonka factory, dude. So I mean, that was in there, dude. And I was like,
the idea was planted.
Exactly. So, yeah. I fell out because of my grades. You have to have a certain grade to get back in, and I wish we would have been more on top of that, or I wish but nonetheless, it had already instilled in me some things. It taught me some of the greatest memories, man. The ropes course, the whitewater rafting, the skiing.
Wow. Yeah.
going to the sand dunes, being around so many women and beautiful girls, and I'm like, yeah, this is a time where, man, I was going nuts. I'm like, what? And my friends, and we were swapping clothes, and I was learning so much, man. I met a person from Tonga, and then Kurt de la Cruz was from Hawaii, and I'm like, who is this big guy who's not even Mexicano, but he looks like me, and we love food, and he's happy-go-lucky, but he's talking pidgin, and so the culture dynamics, man, and I was seeing what students from more urban areas were coming from Denver, seeing their life, and it was so beautiful.
Yeah,
it was such a beautiful experience for me and
wonderful.
Transformational.
So, what was your family's reaction, or did they have a reaction if you talked to them about college, or you expressed interest in college? Did they have a reaction to you? Did they say anything to you?
If I was to have brought up college to my family at that time, I'm sure they would have said, sure, go for it. But they just didn't understand it. I mean, that could have been that was just as foreign to them as saying that you wanted to go into maybe even the Army or they just didn't understand that world. So it wouldn't have meant much, to be honest. I didn't have anyone in the household saying you're going to college. I didn't have teachers telling me you're going to college. I didn't have advisors, no one really. I didn't have my friends. I've seen very few of my friends. I don't recall seeing many of my family members. These are things we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
I would have been more encouraged to, and this is actually what I did as a Latino male, was to go work. Find a good job. Yeah. And I was working summers. As soon as I turned 18, which again, I'm still in high school, I was working the pickle dock. I was working grown men jobs, and still going to school and making the best money I'd ever had. So I was like, I've never seen that. I was probably making more money than my parents. I remember my parents living on $1,200 a month.
Yeah.
And there was 7 of us at it, in the Project 8 housing complex.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine $1,200 a month?
$1,200 a month. That's
unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the way I got to give credit to my stepmother, for doing that and still doing things like paying tithes, and I look back and I lacked little at that time, but I wasn't encouraged to go to college, and nor was education just a priority. Work was a priority. That's what we did. And the more you work, the better. The longer you work, the better. Overtime, even better. If you got $9 an hour, even better, man.
Wow.
You got a good job. If you get benefits, shoots, you made it. That was what was valued in my home, and I understand the why.
Yeah.
But I recognize that if there's one thing I could speak to Latino families today is recognizing and prioritizing education.
Absolutely. So then walk us through from your first to final year in high school. What was that like for you?
Man, I could have easily just not made it every semester. I was flunking. Shoot, I thought that was my middle name. Not passing classes. I really was just. I didn't value grades. I didn't. I mean, but I would go to. I was a rule follower, so I went to classes. Mm-hmm. I did what I needed to do. I didn't ditch. I rarely did all that stuff, but there was no pressure, no accountability to pass, and not that I wanted to graduate, but only because I felt, well, you need a diploma to get a good job. You need a diploma to get any job, right?
Right.
So that was only where my mind was. It wasn't until Upward Bound and having this experience here at CSU that I discovered college is a thing, and I seen what college students lived, and I remember one of my classes being entomology, and we had a professor. Similar to Matt Camper here, but they took us out to the grassy field, and I'm like, man, we do this in post all day long, catch horny toads and grasshoppers and feed them to our cats and everything. But now we're doing it to study, and we're learning that there's degrees in this and there's majors, and we're able to pin them onto a board and like study and draw them. I was like, my mind was blown away. I was really like, this is amazing. But even then, so I graduated Greeley West, and I thought that I wanted to be an elementary teacher, and I got admitted into UNC somehow. I remember being a part of a summer program called Business Week, and I didn't understand what that was about. I was already living on my own and renting my buddy's basement when I got admitted into UNC. And I was working a full-time job. I would leave high school at 2:45. I would start my work at 3 and work till 11. EFTC, Electronic Fab Technology Corporation.
Yeah.
And I would do that every day until I started college. And the same thing. I knew that my schedule at college at UNC, I just had to be out by 3 o'clock because I'm working second shift. And that was all I knew. And by then, my brother said, "Hey, you can come live with us." So I lived with him, and I drove this nasty, beat-up, ring-a-ding pickup, Datsun, probably freaking, 80s pickup, and somehow it got me to school. But I knew nothing of school. I didn't ever meet with a financial aid advisor. I never met with anybody. So I got in, and here I am, just accepted loans after loans because I knew nothing better. I didn't do my FAFSA, so I don't know how. It was just weird, and I remember being so disconnected. I did it because I knew I wanted something better.
Yeah.
That was all I knew.
Yeah.
And I was like, a teacher would be cool.
Yeah.
And I failed. I failed out. I have, my first semester, 15 credits till this day's on my transcript of W's, 15 withdrawals that are W's, and I wasn't invited back. And so here I was dealing with imposters. Here I was dealing with everything. I was like, I don't belong here. And I failed out, so you can imagine how it affirms what you're already feeling, that you didn't belong. You aren't smart enough. You are a knucklehead, and I was. I mean, I got through each of those grades skimming by, really not being prepared for college, and and I just they kept moving me up. They kept promoting me or whatever, but I just didn't have the discipline or the study habits. I didn't know any better.
Okay.
I was lost, man.
How much time did you take off after you said you failed out or you had to leave the university? Did you take a lot of time off before you returned?
Yeah, it took me a while to ever return, and it wasn't until I thought I wanted to go into computer information systems, so I went back to Ames, and then I changed that to criminal justice because, again, I had this heart and compassion to change our community, and so I tried that. I got 18 credits of criminal justice degree at Ames Community College. I'm grateful for the community colleges because that provided a different lens than what my experience was at a 4-year university. It was just so big, so many people, and I was a number. At least at a community college, I was looking around. I was like, okay, I was seeing other people. There was it was a different pace, a little slower. Classes were smaller. People were, instructors and professors were a little easier on you.
Yeah.
So I was working at, by then, which I think was years later, I was recognizing how I enjoyed learning, and I was learning, I was reading, I was doing the homework, and now I was starting to realize, shoot, if I put a little effort in this, I'm going to get something out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I went from that, I went to be a correction officer. I took that degree and went to be a correction officer because, again, that's not where you would go to fix the loss. That is not exactly what I had in mind.
Yeah.
And it was tough. I went through the training, and the training was intense, man. And,
it sounds intense.
And it was like 12 of us, I think, that were started, and only 2 made it. And I wasn't one of them, and it took months. I had to pass polygraph tests. I had to pass all of these tests. I got my... I became a peace officer. After so many, you get sworn in as a peace officer, and I had 160 hours of these trainings, and it was an experience. But I was like, man, I know half these people here.
Yeah.
I don't say this proudly, but that was the one place where diversity wasn't an issue, and that hurt, man. I was really struggling. I struggled with the way officers were treating them, and I struggled with the way officers were treating all of us that were in training, and just I seen the power dynamics. And I was working for the Sheriff County's department. We're doing face-to-face training with inmates, or not training, but these pods are 80 face to face, and I struggled more with the officers than I did with and the system than I did with inmates, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I went through about 4 months of that and didn't make the cut, and they said, "Hey, nice try," but I was hating life, man. I hated going to work, and I was making the best I'd ever made.
Yeah.
So it was an experience, but I was like, hey, I got into the ministry again in a sense, and my buddy, he's like, hey, we're looking for teachers. It was a Hope Co-op, so you just kind of needed to be like a teacher, Most of the kids' trainings was coming from online education, and we were teaching like life skills and gym and, Bible class.
Right,
you didn't need, credentials to do those things. So we did that, and then I realized that, man, I can't help these students in some of these subjects, and I was like, I felt like I was doing a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to get back into school. And in 2007, I did that. And by then I was married, and, our son was about 3 at the time. So in 2007, I returned to UNC.
That's awesome.
Hey there. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsor.
Are you seeking guidance to enhance your TRIO project's effectiveness and success? Look no further. NOSOTROS Education Center, NEC, is here to empower your TRIO project with expert consulting services. NEC's mission is to promote the effectiveness and impact of TRIO programs. Since 2003, NEC has specialized in providing professional development and in-service staff trainings, allowable cost services, for TRIO projects across the country. The team at NEC, with over 60 years of combined TRIO experience, offers customized workshops and seminars for project staff, compliance assessments, external evaluations, working on and submitting APRs, database customization and training, development of policies and procedures manuals, and project implementation or reorganization services. Additionally, NEC has secured over $774 million in federal funding with a 92% success rate through their live and on-demand proposal workshops, assistance with data collection and review, detailed technical reviews, and comprehensive proposal development services. Join the hundreds of colleges, agencies, and TRIO projects across the country who benefited from NEC's expertise. NOSOTROS Education Center, your partner in TRIO's project success. Visit their website at nosotros.edu.org. Again, that's nosotrosedu.org.
And now, back to the podcast.
So, very quickly, UNC, why was that your choice school? Why did you want to go to UNC?
Convenience.
Convenience?
Again, who I was and what I was. I mean, if it was convenience and it was going to accept me, I was about it. There was no way in the world that I would be willing to travel or go out of state or do any of that stuff. That's unheard of. Mm-hmm. In my time, to leave home and to go that far away from family, I would have never done it. Even till this day. Yeah. When I was looking at PhD programs, I would not look further than where I was at because, it's just I don't know if it's comfort level. I don't know, but the idea of leaving family so far was just not instilled in me.
All right. Sometimes, Elias, and let me know if you feel the same way. I see the salary figures of majors in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, and I begin to think to myself, dang. That's a lot of math and science. Did I pick the right field to earn the money and all that? Were you leaning STEM? Were you wanting to be a teacher? Is that just how passionate you were about being a teacher?
Well, yeah. So my bachelor's is in communication with the idea of changing the world, right? I wanted to be. My master's was in educational leadership with emphasis in higher ed and student affairs. Mm-hmm. So it was the time of. Again, there's some chapters that were missed there because when I got a degree in communication, there was somebody by the name of Tobias Guzman, who's still there, Dr. Guzman, by the way, and he was the VP of Enrollment Management, and he said, Elias, we need someone to connect to our Greeley residents. Could you do this? And I'm like, this was my first job of getting paid to travel, getting per diems, represent the school. and I was good at it. I was decent at it, and that's when I discovered higher ed. I had no idea that I could work there. I didn't understand that it was an enterprise, and I didn't understand all of that. But what I did understand was that by working for them and getting paid and doing all this stuff and helping other students get there, and what made me good was that I could meet students at their level because I came from the lowest. You couldn't get any lower of misunderstanding and not understanding higher ed than what I was. So I could meet families and students at that level and be effective. And I could say, just do this and we can get you here and we can get you this and this. So yeah, I worked for UNC for 5 years in missions. And then through that time, they were like, hey, and Elias, you realize that, as an employee, you get 100% tuition discount.
Whoa.
For you and your dependents.
Whoa.
Exactly, bro. Exactly. And I'm like, what? Say less, man. I started working on the master's degree, got into ed leadership because I was like, well, I think I can figure this out. And my wife started going to, and I can't share this. My wife's given me permission to share this, but so she was born in Mexico and received a permanent residency, in her early years. And it wasn't until we got married years later that she received her citizenship. But with a permanent residency, she was able to get in state and get a teaching license, which she's always wanted to become. And being a part of that journey and being able to process for each other to go through that while raising a child, was pretty special, and it was pretty lonely. I mean, we weren't getting the pats on the back or the encouragement from. Because again, people didn't understand this. They didn't understand. My wife's family didn't understand how to support, and my family didn't understand how to support. So nobody really knew what we were going through. So after we were committed into higher ed and education in general, brother, you got to understand, we were living in two worlds worlds that did not speak to each other.
Yeah.
These worlds didn't understand the importance of quinceañeras and all this stuff, or the fact that, look, we don't have parents that are going to give us or pay for our car, pay for our insurance, pay for our school, pay for our supplies, pay for anything. Right. And this world, they just didn't understand what our classes were going to be like. They didn't understand that you had to buy textbooks that were worth $100, $150. They've never spent that much money on clothes, much less books. Yeah. So there was just so much of isolation and loneliness that came, and so we had to learn to depend on each other. And it wasn't until programs like TRIO, again, in college, that created a community of a space that did understand those of us that were out there in this world, and that was encouraging, and that came through. Now, cultural centers weren't part of the TRIO program, but it's the dynamics, and that's that community that they developed that were so crucial for us in regards to our journey and success.
Absolutely. Talk to us about mentors in college. Who were those encouraging people that kept you engaged and hooked into what you were doing and made you believe, like, yes, I got to keep doing this and I got to keep going?
My peers I met some great friends, and I'll say, the Ivan Diaz, the Chris Garcias, people that did know my life, that were living, a life. They were a little younger than me at the time, but, just we could joke, we could be real, and we were just all learning together, man. And so I give credit to them, despite, our paths going different directions now. I do appreciate what they were for me at that time. But then there was people like Eric Reneker, who's the director of the Upward Bound program there at UNC, and it wasn't residential. It was a different, they were coming to UNC after school, and doing classes there. So it was different, but it was a world that I understood. So he hired me. He hired me to work with the students, and of course I was like, say less. Yeah, I'll do anything for Upward Bound. And most people that are TRIO recipients and alums, would say the same thing. So Trish Escobar, man, she was the director of the Cesar Chavez Cultural Center. Again, Tobias Guzman. There was people like that. I remember, a class with Manny Trevino, who was my first Mexican American Studies class, and he had me read the book, A Different Mirror, and I'm just learning so much. Dr. Falcon, who taught me about Mexican American studies and the history and learning about the Chichimeca and Teotihuacans and learning the lineage of from indigenous communities all the way to where we're at today. It was special, man, and this is the first time ever that I seen two worlds then come together.
Yeah,
makes sense, and I'm like, what? My heritage, the taco menudo, tamales, all of these things that was part of my culture, and yet different than a traditional Mexican culture. Because again, mine in West Texas was like this Tejano, Chicano kind of a culture where enchiladas were something different to me than they were to my wife Laura, or tacos, was an actual hard shell taco, and to my wife was like, hey, that's a burrito, dude. and, there were so many things that we till this day, we can discuss the names of what we would call something, and she's like, learn Spanish, Elias. But I was. That's when I embraced a lot of my culture and really said, "There's so much beauty in this, and there's no reason why we can't continue to invest in and embrace educated Latinos."
Absolutely.
And we have a place, and that was when I started discovering that we have a place.
Right on. Talk to us about that moment that you graduated from college. What was that moment like for you?
Sure. By then, again, we're doing our own thing, so we're out of the house to graduate from college. Then the people that would even wonder, well, maybe my family, I wanted to be there, but we were doing our own celebration. We celebrated because it was only Laura and I that really knew, but my friends and my church community, were part of those celebrations. And that was special. And I'll never forget, man, when I graduated, Tobias Guzman, again, the VP of Enrollment Management, he had came to my party, and, another colleague of mine that was my boss, came by. And I mean, it was special. And by then I had already had a niche in leadership. I talked about being in the ministry, so I had a niche in leadership. And so I was comfortable developing, these leaders within the church and having pastor friends and having just all of these spaces where, I could befriend people. So that was my bachelor's degree was that, but the coolest part was them offering me a job. You got to understand for us and those of us that were coming from these identities and stuff, what we understand is work. What I understood there was, if I'm going to study this hard, I have to be able to make money because to be honest, my faith was I was getting ridiculed. Actually, I was getting kind of guilt shamed for being the male in my household and not having a full-time job. For my wife working while I was going to school and just doing a part-time job. I was getting really that was held against me. And it is those pressures oftentimes that I still see today in Latino students who are saying, hey, I can't leave my family to do this work. I have to. Who else is going to be able to help the family with income? So these are the challenges. Or they get here and they want to work 30, 40 hours while being a student, right?
Yeah.
That's they need someone there that can say that's very difficult. And
absolutely.
It's not always feasible.
So for some, after a 4-year degree is done, and you said there was already pressures for you to be a full-time employee somewhere, right? But you decided 4-year degree should not be enough. You decided to pursue a master's. What was your decision behind that, and why did you decide to pursue the master's degree?
Well, jumping right in from my undergraduate to being an admissions counselor, that was it wouldn't have been the same had I done anything else. I mean, I was then living higher ed. I mean, my whole job, me traveling. I started off recruiting in the Greeley area. It moved to New Mexico. It moved to North Denver. It moved to Arizona. Moved to California. And then by my last year, I was recruiting in Hawaii.
Wow.
And I was getting it. And I was like, shit.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't even so much. I wasn't like we're getting commissioned for each win, but it was which students I was bringing in, and the fact that many of them were graduating in 4 years, so I got to see them start. They would have never come to UNC had I not just used a little charm and pizzazz or whatever, got them there. And next thing you know, they're nurses, from Hawaii that are now, but teachers, because they took advantage of our Cumbres program at UNC, and it's so empowering, man, to me to be an honor. So I was hooked, buddy. I was hooked when I said I can get a master's in this. And at that time, they started bringing in, faculty like Katrina Rodriguez, and I remember reading books by, Laura Rendon. I think it was called Sente Pensante Pedagogy.
Yeah.
And I remember it rocking my world, man. And so I was all about this, and I can do this. And then it was getting paid for. So that was the other thing that I understood is like, hey, I can't afford, the $500 credit hours.
Yeah.
So I just stuck with it, and little by little, man, I got through it. And next thing you know, here I am planning a master's degree. So mind-boggling to me, so mind-boggling to my family, and everybody's like, what is going on, man?
Yeah.
And it was so special for me.
So graduating again for the second time. Talk to us about getting that master's degree and what that moment was like for you.
It created some. It created confidence, of course, but it opened up opportunities. So I had. I was a recipient of the 40 under 40 through BizWest for the work that I was doing with underrepresented students. Yeah. By then, I was like, I had the skill set. I was the knowledge to be almost unstoppable. It felt like, right? I was like, I know more, and I could do more. So my influence started getting broader. So after I got my master's degree, they shoulder tapped me. UNC shoulder tapped me. Says, hey, we're needing a hall director. And I don't know if I would have done it again in the same way, because man, I was going from a pretty mediocre salary to an even less salary, and you needed to have a master's degree, but it was because they were providing a housing and a meal plan and all this stuff. So it was new to my wife and I and Christian, and I'm like, wow, we're living on campus, but we're also living at the same place that we work. That was wild to me. I was like, when does this shut off? It was crazy. I was living in a fishbowl, and the things that I valued so much about home was never really home, but it was always in a professional manner. Yeah. So when I would share to people that, I was a hall director, and we tell her, and Laura, she lives education. She loves school, and she's just that person. Mm-hmm. So for her, man, she just loved living there. For Miko, he was safe all the time. It was beautiful. It felt like this is the first time, not the first time, I guess, but I mean, here I'm living the life of a professional, and that is still, sometimes I pinch myself and think, wow, this is it. Yeah. I'm doing it, Yeah. It seems like we're always chasing something. And it's really not until we stop and pause where we're like, man, life is good. I'm getting paid to they're paying for my salary, they're paying for my home, they're paying for my meal plans and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't easy, man. It wasn't easy to take care of 375 students. And again, I know that previously we had Danielle Pacheco and her being they're understanding what that housing life is like and being on call 24/7. I can't tell you the many stories, man, where I'm dragging my family out because of just so many instances of bomb threats and this and that, or sprinklers or something. And it was crazy. And to be honest, I mean, there's people in this world, and this is higher ed is a big, again, business and enterprise, and there's so many different departments, whether it be financial aid, whether it be housing, whether it be advising, so many different departments to make it work, right? Absolutely. And in higher ed, we're recognizing that there's associations. So there's people that have been in one of these things for years, and that's all they've known. I mean, they live and breathe housing. I remember them doing. There was hall directors that were all about, they knew about RHA and all this housing association stuff, and they would do all these games and do all this stuff. That was foreign to me, because I'm like, this is a profession. I wanted to be professional. All these games and stuff I didn't understand, and competitions. that were just a little weird for me. So having fun while working was just a little different, but yet trying to keep everybody safe. It was this weird balance that it took me. I mean, to go into housing, dude. I just think you are, for those that are in housing, props to you. Much love to you. May the force be with you. I mean, it is not for everybody, and I quickly discovered it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And that's when I got picked up by the Colorado Department of Higher Education, which again was a huge honor because this now is representing the state of Colorado in education.
Absolutely,
at the state level. So here I was like, I only heard of the Lieutenant Governor, Joe Garcia, but now we're seeing him come to our meetings, and now I'm getting paid better than I'd ever had in the past, and to do something that I was like, it was coming pretty easy to me. So I want to give a quick shout out to Christine Ingram because she is. She's my supervisor and the program director for Colorado Europe, and she was just so influential in my development. And so I had 4 years, 5 years. And one of the special things about my time there, which again, that was when I was an affiliate here. I was placed here at CSU to serve our students through this Colorado Europe program. After my 5th year, and this is still in my office today, one of the favorite gifts that I've ever gotten was they award you a Colorado flag that they'll fly up on the Capitol for one day in honor of your 5-year anniversary when you're working with the state. So I got that, and I did the traditional flag fold, and I have it on my desk now. And it was special, man.
Amazing.
It was special.
So, Elias, quick recap. You were working, completed undergrad, you completed a master's, but then you decided you wanted to go into a doctoral program. What was your decision behind that, and what is that like now?
Yeah, I've always wanted to be one. I've always had this desire to excel. Even though I recognize my strengths and my weaknesses, but if there was something better up there, I was at least curious enough to want it. So when I discovered higher ed leadership, and I'd seen that there's so many different acronyms, HESL, HEL, SAHI, and I discovered that we have a program here. I was like, why not, man? I mean, if I want to be the best, and I didn't lie. I love the idea of having Dr. Quiñonez next to my title. I was
already fancy.
I was already getting really comfortable with this, people seeing me as a professional. And I said, well, if there's another level, why can't I? Unfortunately, I shared that, in 2017, my parents passed away. So it wasn't until 2018 that I got admitted into this program. That over 100 applicants and 15 were admitted, and it was our program here at CSU. Only 2 from Colorado, and only 1 that was working here at CSU, man, and that was me. So I was in awe of that. And at that time, I was doing some work with again the supporting DACA students here, and I was the advisor to our Dreamers United here at the time. I brought to campus, by that time I had brought to campus ASU's Dream Zone training. So I brought a facilitator from them I remember meeting with Mary Ontiveros and asking, hey, could we bring Dream Zone to which is a training program that helps serve undocumented students. And she says, well, if you're going to fund it, and why not? Let's do this thing. So I got the green light from. It didn't get much higher than her, in my opinion, and I had the approval from my RN in Colorado Europe, and there we were. So I had the first meeting. I brought a facilitator, 25 people from CSU, and the idea was to train the trainers, right, and so that we could then develop a training program, call it Dream Zone, and then adapt some things that would work for us here at CSU. And at that time, we didn't have as many, in that situation because there was no assistance for students in that space. So students were having to find private donors to pay out-of-state tuition. Right. So that was, our numbers, but law had just passed where they were, and it was transitioning to in-state, and then we started being able to do more and more. I says, let's stay ahead of this. At that time, man, February 11th, I want to say, is when we brought them to campus in 2015.
Wow.
And so I'd been here a year, And we got the green light to do it, man. And next thing you know, dude, this is something I hadn't shared before. Next thing you know, I had a team of powerful people that came together to be a part of this core team, and we were starting to develop this training and Office of Admissions, registrars, financial aid. All of them said, so CSU picked it up and said, we're training all of our staff in this space.
Wow.
And so we trained over 300 faculty, students, and staff.
Amazing.
This 4-hour Dream Zone training from this powerful team at the time.
Yeah.
And through that, we then developed, the campus contacts that we're specializing in working with. And that's kind of where, C4E came, and then they've dispersed. It looks a little different. But I was very honored to be a part of those early efforts.
Right on. What is something you would like to share with TRIO students thinking about pursuing their undergrad, grad, or doctoral degree?
Oh, man. TRIO students. Oh, geez. Well, if you already understand what it is to be a TRIO student, you already have an advantage. And I just couldn't affirm enough how much of an advantage it is. I don't think you realize it because it just feels like another program. It feels like everybody's doing, a form of program and offering a program, but TRIO is unlike any other program, and it can have just a life-changing impact and a huge directional change in your life for the positive. So I'd say stick with it, advocate for it, continue to fight for it, and more often than not, you can't go wrong.
Awesome. Talk to us about your research in your doctoral program. How does that research relate to TRIO programs?
That's a great question, and so I just completed my coursework. It took 5 years to make that bad boy happen. But,
wow.
And while I'm excited to talk about the research, I want to share this other thing that, because it's easy to say, oh, you got into a master's program, but you still had to do the work to get through the master's. So that's 30 credits. Well, this PhD program, I mean, not only did you get in, and that's cool and all, but you had to take two. We're designed to take to be a working professional. You take 2 credits every semester, then 1 in the summer, and then 2, during the semester. For 4 years, you're doing coursework like that.
Wow.
And this is at the highest level of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking 600-700 level, coursework.
Wow.
And we're talking some pretty, it's just all of
intense.
That. It's not given to you.
Yeah.
And time, and I can't tell you the many times, that I felt that I just can't do it. It's just too much.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, you're in a profession that we're advocating and in the fight, kind of sort of say, every day. And then we're at home, and then we're dealing with finance, we're dealing with all the other stuff, we're dealing with dysfunctional families, we're dealing with life in general.
Right.
And while trying to complete a PhD, so I just don't want to take lightly this idea of getting admitted is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
but doing the work and passing each course, and I want to be transparent, man. That last credit, which I was just an empty shell of a person during that last year,
Wow.
and I failed it. I couldn't complete. I couldn't do the work that was needed, and it took a year before I could get back to that one course just to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, its whole purpose is to develop an independence to where you're doing your own research, you're doing your own studies, and you're doing your own. We oftentimes will prioritize work. We oftentimes will prioritize family because we'll put ourselves last because we can come in at the end to do it. Well, I couldn't fake it. You can't fake this.
You can't.
And that's where I'm at now, where I've got to work to get my prelims. I got to work to get question ones. You got to write, and you got to do scholarly writing. So, and you got to find my biggest challenge until this day is finding a topic that you want to put a magnifying glass to and study in it in depth. So I was all over the place. I was interested in HSI. I was interested in TRIO. I was interested in so many access and support for underrepresented students. It's what I live and breathe, and we will in my days with access and support for underrepresented students, but choosing that as just your PhD, that's just too broad.
Yeah.
Well, I adamantly cared about ethnically diverse demographics. Adamantly cared about Native Americans, Black African Americans, of course Latinos, Latina, Latinx, and I wanted to do something in each of these, and I just loved, and till this day I get mind blown by new areas of focus. But then I read a report recently, the commission report, that really aligned with everything. And oftentimes in a dissertation and a research, it's based off of your life experience, right? Your life journey. And for me, it made all the sense in the world when I read a report about equity through high impact practices. I thought, well, what is the one thing that's been transformational throughout my whole experience in higher ed? And it started with Upward Bound. Upward Bound is, in my opinion, the epitome of an equitable high-impact practice, where it recognizes identities. And while it is not the sole purpose of an admission space, it recognizes that and builds from that and sees that as part of your stories and develops curriculum from that. I says, lights, man, right just clicked.
Wow.
And when I thought about, community for excellence, key communities, programs that have it figured out, and that are just doing well and, becoming outliers in a lot of ways and things, it is that kind of equity in a high impact practice that they discover. It's a holistic view of a student story.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where I said I'm running with this. And that's where my research is falling on, is equity within higher impact practices. I was fortunate enough to go through an assessment institute recently, and I bought as many books as I could find in regards to this area. Man, it's just affirming what these programs that are built in this structure and this dynamic can do. And I've been fortunate enough to practice it in my spaces now, which I would love to share at some point. Of course, after I want to cover as much as we can in this space, but I'm really excited about some recent efforts in regards to a program I call the Semilla Project.
All right. That's awesome.
We can talk about that at whatever point you
So, Elias, you've persisted through a variety of challenges. What is some advice you would share with TRIO students in terms of those challenges that you faced? What would you say to them about facing challenges and overcoming obstacles?
I would say that those challenges don't always go away, and that the fight isn't exactly going to be roses all the time, and especially when it's things that you care about and advocate for. When you're choosing to go in this space, I would say be prepared for a pretty tough battleground. I mean, there's a lot of rewards, and obviously the rewards will outweigh the battles, but when you care about something so much, and when you already you either have lived experiences and you see who's left outside of the gate, you see who's not getting in, you see who's not in the room, you see who's not in these spaces, it's heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Heart-wrenching, man.
Oh, yeah.
And when you have the knowledge and the education to see, well, then why? Why is it that some can and others haven't? You recognize that there's some inequities that you want to advocate for. And when you become part of these stories and part of these lives and stuff, it's heart-wrenching work.
Absolutely.
So you got to learn to balance that with self-care. You got to learn to balance that with being surrounded by other people that are doing inspiring work, so that when one is not at the highest level of ready to take on the world, because you'll be there, and then there's other days where you're going to be this empty shell, as I've shared in the time where that's unfortunately happened. But it's worth it. I mean, it is so worth it, and so I would encourage anyone that is thinking about higher education, or thinking about going to college, absolutely it's worth it, man. But have a purpose, have a plan. And, I can't tell anyone what that purpose or plan is. But for me, it was impacting lives and making a difference in our community. It really was to try to do my best at that. That's what's been my driving force. And I needed to stay grounded in that. Till this day, I need to remind myself why I'm doing this,
Absolutely.
And I talked about my son coming to college and how life's been different for him. But, man, the stories of the students that we've worked with and the impact that and the opportunities that education has provided, it's a game changer, and it changes generational patterns for the better. It can oftentimes do that. Now, I'm not saying that entrepreneur and there's other things that aren't, that college is for everyone. That's a whole different argument. But I can say that education, in the most part, can create opportunities and allow you to then advocate for others and to be a game changer, to change systems, to change broken systems, and that can impact our community.
In the same vein, what is some advice that you would like to share with TRIO professionals?
It's easy in the space to, and by no means do I have all the answers. I'm just sharing, but from my lived experiences, again, my personal things. But it's easy for us to look across and compare everything that we don't have, to see our jobs as just a job, and to look over and say, well, engineering, they're making this, and they're directors of this and this, and in business they're making this, and private industries, and they are making that, and I'm nothing against that, nothing against personal choice if that's what you choose. But I'll tell you, man, at the end of the day, the dash between the stone, of the birth and the end of life, man, what we're doing is stinking special.
Absolutely.
It's immeasurable.
Absolutely.
It's invaluable, and I don't want that to be a justification for us to not advocate for higher pay when we're deserved, or not advocate for, being stretched thin, because unfortunately that's the situations that we're often are in. There's never enough people. There's never enough resources, never enough money and funding. But man, I would just encourage you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the years of service, of the years and years of the lack of the pats on the back that you've received, and the acknowledgement that you've received for your hard work that no one else will receive. And oftentimes our students may not. They appreciate it and they know the difference, but they might not know to say thank you. They might not recognize it even until years later. But know that you are making an impact, and that impact is immeasurable, and so that is special. Know that whatever you decide, this work is unlike any other, and it is primarily because of the places and the lives that we have been entrusted with, that others couldn't get to. So, and you're there, you're doing the work, and you're changing lives. You're changing lives in a very special way, and in return, it's changing our life.
Wonderful message, Elias. What is next for you 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, I got to get this degree. I got to get this PhD.
Absolutely.
It's got to be
Yes.
Dr. Quiñonez at some point, and I got to prioritize that. So I got to figure out how to do whatever I need to take to prioritize this next step, because at this point it's all on me. But during that, and I got to share, the opportunities that I've had here in the College of Ag, and the work that's going on. So I'm the advisor to MANRS, which is Minorities in Agriculture, Related Science, Natural Science, and Natural Resources and Related Science. And I'll tell you, I just came out of a meeting where students that are in these spaces are now discovering how they can be leaders in this world and really acknowledge and share a story. So many of them are carrying, their family's legacy, some of their abuelos' legacy, and they're recognizing and seeing, and it's going to be a tough challenge, but I've just been fortunate to be a part of this and develop leaders. We're going to a conference in April, and we're gonna develop a chapter that's going to be powerful here at CSU and here in our college, and that is so encouraging. And we already see the impact that it's making. Students, just before here, a student came with me and said, Elias, can we have a student organization called Latinos in Ag? And I said, absolutely. Yeah, let's and they had ideas about what they wanted it to look like, and I said, let's get it registered and become a club in Oregon. So there's wonderful works that I have the opportunity to work with there, and I get to stand side by side by other amazing leaders that are working in these spaces of diversity and advocacy, of inclusion, and so forth.
Okay.
But I wanted to share one of the most recent accolades, and it was in regards to CSU systems. And being awarded a grant called the Semilla Project, which I named and embraced, and I developed a team. I brought in my former supervisor, Christine Ingram, who oversees all of Europe. Mm-hmm. I also brought in my good friend Ty Smith, who is the Native American Cultural Center director here, and he got us access to use his networking and brought in 2 wonderful Native American programs in the Denver area, Denver Jeffco Native American education programs. So between Colorado Gear Up and these 2 Native American education programs, because of Christine Ingram and because of Ty Smith, we were awarded this grant that's allowing us to serve students for 5 years and take them through our new campus in Spur, which if you haven't visited, if you're ever in the Denver area, please visit our Spur campuses. There are 3 buildings, Hydro, Terra, and Vida, and just phenomenal campuses. So now we have the resources to bring 17 different groups of students from Denver, Colorado, just throughout our urban and rural spaces, to get them to and through our Spur campus, to be able to provide a workshop that is engaging to them, and to help them, remind them of our impact and heritage and of our story of and connection to agriculture, but also tell them that just as much as they're a part of the historically, they have to be a part of it in the future. We have to be a part of it today and tomorrow. These industries, we need each of these students to be advocates and to be in these spaces and to be the scientists, to be the soil and crop specialists, to understand cattle and equine sciences, to understand water resources, all of our, and to advocate. So I'm fortunate enough to have been awarded that. I'm fortunate enough to be working with great leaders that see it, to work with department heads that are invested in this, and to be a college that's allowed me the opportunity to be a part of this. These students are mostly first gen, oftentimes of color, definitely many are limited income, but these are students within the community that are now going to get what I would consider a first class experience to show how valuable they are. Awesome. I called it the Semilla Project because I'm adamant that a semilla will fulfill its purpose when the environment has all of the proper nutrients and the proper, when a semilla is taken care of and nurtured, and oftentimes those things that we value are, they fulfill their purpose.
They do, for sure.
When the environment creates is not all that. We still have the seeds strong enough that continue to produce and to flourish, but yet not in the best outcome. So the Semilla Project is basically saying we recognize environments and that our environments are part of our story. Yeah. And then the time that we have to be a part of your environment, we're going to make the absolute best that we can and show the world why you matter. So every student, we're going to serve 1,000 students every year for 5 years. Wow. 250 of those students are from Native American communities. Wow. Every student will have a shirt that says Yo soy la semilla in the back. We designed a very special logo in the front. The back it says Yo soy la semilla because the one message that we want to tell the world is that they are the seed and that the environment around them can make them better or can bring challenges.
Yeah.
I want them to recognize how they can contribute to helping fulfill the purpose of these seeds. And I couldn't be more excited and more honored we're getting great traction. We got the Colorado Department of Agriculture reaching out to us and the outreach, saying they want to know what's going on with managers and what's happening to this
Right.
and what's happening with this. I mean, they've heard of this, and we got an outreach specialist from our extension agents up in the Denver area, and we have other agents throughout Colorado that are wanting to learn and say, how can we continue to reach? We have a wonderful program called Envirothon that's going to be intentional about reaching developing two teams from our youth nation, and that's going to be special. So being able to be just known for and share resources and being around people that recognize the beauty into this is pretty awesome.
That's amazing.
So
That's amazing, Elias. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing. What is one word you would use to describe yourself? I know earlier in the podcast we said, how would family describe you? Now looking and reflecting on all the work that you've done, your legacy that you're working on, what's the one word you would use to describe yourself?
Besides out of shape?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. I'm not out of shape, folks. I'm really 6'2" and 175. Okay. Hope. Hope. I was at a conference one year in Arizona, and at that conference Gallup did a research on teachers and saying what makes teachers exceptional. And out of that research, everything was just everything was pretty much on the bell curve in regards to teachers that created more homework, teachers that were higher advanced, all this and that,
right?
More educated, all that, and those were all pretty much standard. There was one thing that really set apart some teachers. I'm talking like 4 or 5. It was an identifier that really made people an outlier. And I was, and as they were sharing with that, they said that teachers that instilled hope in their students were those teachers that were seen as the best. They were the ones that were seen as exceptional, that outdoing everyone by.
That's amazing.
By, again, this crazy outlier on the scale. So I would love, and Trio, this is what they're known for, and great people that influence others are known for this. They build up others. They instill hope. They see people for not where they're at, but where they're going.
That's amazing.
They overlook, our flaws and our attitudes, and they allow a little grace, and they say, okay, we'll continue to grow and learn, but they instill hope, and I know that, and there's a big theory on hope, and it goes along with sense of belonging, it goes along with so many other things, but hope, man, is a powerful thing, and guess what, Juan? It costs us nothing. It costs us nothing to instill that in people. It costs us nothing to look for the best in people. So if there was one word that I would want to, exude, if there's one word that I'd want to, yell from the rooftop, is let's instill hope in others. And hope is more than just a word. It's more than it's how people feel.
Absolutely.
It's how you make people feel, and they remember that. So it's a powerful thing, and it's one that I continue to do every day. I try.
Thank you, Elias, for your time this evening. This was such a great conversation. We definitely need to have a part 2. I feel like there's more to your story and there's more you need to say. So we should definitely do this again.
Well, Mr. U.S., I could not be more grateful for the opportunity. And again, it only took me 3 years to be on your podcast. I'm honored. And to your listeners, this says more about you than it does about me. For you to recognize the beauty of Trio and the impact that it's made in so many lives, I mean, this is where it counts. The work that you're doing is immeasurable, invaluable, and will continue to make a difference in so many lives. So I would love to close with this, affirming a message that Trio works. Again, my name is Elias Quiñonez. I'm the manager of Student Life and Diversity here at Colorado State University, soon to be Dr. Quiñonez, and an advocate for me, an advocate for you, and another quick reminder that Trio works.
Are you a participant, alum, or staff of a TRIO program? Do you want your program highlighted? You or your program could be featured in an upcoming episode of Let's Talk TRIO. Get a hold of us by going to our Facebook page or Instagram and send us a direct message. Search for Let's Talk TRIO. We want to get your story to the public.
That was our guest, Elias Quiñonez, a TRIO alum of the Upward Bound program at Colorado State University. Elias, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for sharing your TRIO story. Remember, if you would like to be on the Let's Talk TRIO podcast or know a staff, advocate, or participant or alumni, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. A huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Angelica Valdez, Rosario Riley, TrioJoblist.com, NOSOTROS Education Center, Jaded Electronics, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. I'd like to take a moment to thank our honorary members of the Let's Talk TRIO podcast, Roderick Chambers, Tony Ho, Scott Kendall, and Susan Cramp. The Let's Talk TRIO podcast team is John Russell, audio engineer, music producer and composer, and post-production editor. Amelia Castañeda, script supervisor, marketing manager, social media manager, and producer. Juan Rivas, executive producer and host. This episode was recorded Thursday, February 9th, 2023. Remember, the right to vote is your most crucial right. Please exercise it every chance you get. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.